I'm very well aware that I'm standing between you and the first coffee break. We've been sitting for an hour, so everybody stand up. Let's get a little shakeout here. And I just want to do a quick exercise. If your birthday is on an odd date, hold your hands like this. And if your birthday's on an even date, hold it like that. Thank you. Hold it for a second. I just want to... All right, I got a standing ovation. Perfect. Awesome. All right, you can sit down. Thank you. All right, so quick question for the crowd. Who here is sick of all the sports analogies we hear in business? It's brutal, right? Well, I got bad news. You're not going to have a lot of fun during this presentation. I'll buy you a beer tonight. I owe you one. Something real quick. So this is not going to be a Shift Group commercial, I promise, but I do want to make a really quick point. Athletes are not bros. Bros are bros. There's a huge difference, right? 50% of the 460,000 NCAA athletes in the United States are females by law. 70% of athletes that play either football or basketball are minorities. So the athletes are not all bros. The other thing that's really something to think about is there's 19 million college students enrolled in the United States and only 460,000 athletes. So that means 2.4% of the college population makes the sacrifices it takes to be a student athlete, right? Practices, bus rides on the weekends and during the week, physical therapy, weight room, all that stuff, and they have the same academic workload as their student peers. So these people are special people. That's why I started my company focused on it. We also do military vets. We don't advertise that as much. We're trying to get 50 placed before we really start talking about it, and we're on our way there. But right now, it's a focus on athletes. And now the other thing is with sports, it's important to remember that sports teaches kids some really important lessons: teamwork, dedication, commitment, and I think most importantly, resiliency and mental toughness. Sports is where we learn how to lose and come back from losses. And I'm talking to a room full of salespeople, so I know that everybody in this room has had a ton of losses in their career, because I have, right? I wanted to give you guys a little context as to who I am, because there's some guy from Boston talking up here about hiring A players. What does he know about it? I grew up I played football, hockey, and baseball growing up, but I grew up in a hockey family. My father coached high school hockey in Massachusetts for 35 years. He's in the Massachusetts Hockey Coaches Hall of Fame. High school hockey in Massachusetts is like high school football here in Texas. So that's a big deal. And he's definitely a legend, and I learned a lot. I also grew up in a high school hockey locker room, which is probably not a great thing, but the lessons I learned from my dad were phenomenal. I played college hockey at a school up in the Northeast called College of the Holy Cross, small school, small Jesuit college. But my sophomore year, we beat the University of Minnesota in the regional. It's considered where college hockey changed. Since that game, more number 4 seeds in regionals have gone on to win the national championship than number 1 seeds. Prior to that, there was really no parity in college hockey. The big schools got the best players, and everybody would watch Michigan, North Dakota, Boston College, and BU win national championships. That's changed completely since the game. To give you some context, they had over 1,000 NHL games, actually over 3,000 NHL games played of the kids that were on that team. We had 0. They had 14 NHL players. We had 14 future sales guys. So we had a team of A players, and we're going to talk about what that means. After college, I tripped and fell into sales. Complete accident. I was a sociology major that graduated in 2008. Wasn't a really great time to not know how to use a computer yet, but I tripped and fell into tech sales. I was a reseller for 7 years, and then I was an early third sales rep at a company called VM Turbo up in Boston. I built out the BDR program there, inside sales commercial team, and then I built out an enterprise organization. We went from $1 million to $200 million in 7 years, and IBM bought us for $2 billion. Then I got involved in the venture community and actually got fortunately brought in to be a chief revenue officer at a pre-Series A company out in Arizona, and helped them raise a Series A. So I've seen everything from like founder-led all the way to a multi-billion-dollar exit. The only thing I haven't seen is an IPO. So I've got a little bit of experience building out sales teams and selling complex technology solutions. The first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that we defined what an A player was, right? We all have different things in our mind of what an A player really is. This was kind of like the most concise explanation I found. Ultimately, the way I think of an A player, and if anyone, thinks anything else, please find me after, because I definitely want to get my arms around this thing. But A players excel. They're self-starting. They're super resourceful. They don't quit, right? When times get hard, like right now, they don't quit. And they're accountable. That's a big one, right? Accountability. We used to have a huge sign in the sales floor in Turbo in Boston. It said, "No victims." That's a big thing that A players bring to the table. So what do A players need, right? The first thing they need, and this is really like what you should be doing when you're recruiting, is you need to position your opportunity, right? Is this somewhere where they can have a successful exit or an IPO, and can they earn a lot of money on their W-2, right? That's super important. You got to sell that opportunity, right? A players want to go to winning teams. You got to sell why your team can win. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on how I've historically recruited A players by selling the opportunity. The second thing is A players want to be surrounded by other A players. So they want a culture of excellence. They want to be around people that are hardworking, high intellect, other accountable people. I'm allowed to do one swear presentation, my mom told me. So what I call this is they want to be around people that give a shit. That's really what A players want, okay? That'll be my only swear, I promise. That's pretty good for a guy from Boston. They want to go somewhere that they know is going to make them better, right? A players always want to get better. We talked about that. So they want that culture of development, that culture of growth. And then lastly, they want to know what good looks like, and they want to know exactly how they can get there, right? So I'm going to break these things down, but this is when I was kind of putting this presentation together, I thought about all the A players that I've been fortunate enough to work with, work for, and have work for me, and all of them had this in common. Trust me, the list was a lot longer, but these were the 4 that I broke down the simplest. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about how I've sold opportunities, like how I was bringing in really good salespeople to Turbonomic during our high growth years. The first of all is they want to go after a big problem and they want to solve it uniquely, right? So salespeople want to know a lot of customers have this problem and we have a unique way to solve this problem. That's number one. So think about with your businesses, how do you position that? And this is an acronym, so I'm going to make it really easy for you to remember it. The next thing is they want to sell value. They want to be able to go to a customer and explain what the negative consequences of their problem is and what's the return on investment if you invest in my technology. That's really important for good salespeople to understand. They want to know that the customers are going to get that value quickly, right? Especially nowadays. No longer are the days for 18-month implementations before someone's using your platform. They want to know they're going to get their ROI and they're going to get it quick. They want a clear and concise buyer. They want to know exactly who they need to get to. They might not start with them, but who in the organization do I need to get to? Do I need to get a seat at the table with to convince to buy my technology, right? ASP, right? This doesn't mean you need to sell $1 million average sales prices. But you need to be able to explain your ASP, how it gets them to their number, and how they can do that repeatedly, right? So just think of a story around what's your average sales price and what's that mean for their quota? What's that mean for their commission checks at the end of the year and their W-2? They want to understand what the competitive landscape looks like. What are other people doing? Who is the big player in this space and why? How can we beat them? How can we take them down? And the last thing is, especially for earlier stage companies, they want to understand, you're going to give me equity in your business. How much is it worth now and how much can it be worth someday if we reach our goals as an organization, okay? And to give you some little insights, there's several venture capital firms that use this acronym. They grade these 8 things, 1 to 5, and they won't talk to a business that's below a 45 or a 40. So that's how a lot of companies that I've worked with, venture firms that I've worked with and partnered with, will actually evaluate the potential investments that they're going to make. All right. That being said, if all you do is sell your opportunity, you're going to hire a bunch of mercenaries over missionaries. And you do not want mercenaries in your business. Mercenaries can create bad culture, right? It can affect other people. You want people that are missionaries, not mercenaries. So how do you do that? The first is you want to sell the outcomes that they can drive, but you want to sell more the growth and development that they can have at your organization. How are they going to leave better than the day they started? What are you going to do for them to make them better sellers, to make them more experts, to make their potential career path go up and to the right, which A players want. They want growth. The second thing is nobody cares how your zero trust technology is going to change the way people authenticate in IT. Like, nobody cares. Sorry. So you have to sell the process over the mission. You want to sell them how you're going to make them cybersecurity sales experts that can walk into a room with any CISO in the country and close a deal, and how they're going to do that, right? So yes, your mission matters, and there are probably some founders in the room. I'm a founder myself. I believe in my mission greatly. But when I hire somebody, I want them to understand that when they're done with me, they're going to be able to get any job that they want because I'm going to make them an expert. And that's why I have a team of A players. The other thing is A players want to be super clear and super concise on what their goals are, right? They want to know exactly how can they achieve their goals and how can they get there, right? So vagueness is not good for A players. It's not good. You want to know exactly what do I need to do to make the amount of money I need to, that I want to make this year. There's a lot of talk, and I've sold to mostly CIOs my whole career, complex enterprise technology from virtualization all the way to cloud management. But now I'm in selling to salespeople for the first time in my career. So I'm on like the LinkedIn. I'm in like the LinkedIn bubble of like all these LinkedIn influencers, and there's a lot about giving people autonomy and giving people balance, which I think is really healthy. But there's a line, we've definitely crossed it. You got to have a playbook. Like, people want to come and they want to know, what do I need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to get to the goal that I have myself? A players have goals. You got to give them the roadmap to get there. Today, come by our booth. We have what's called a winner's manual. One of my employees was a college football coach at Michigan State, and they gave every player at the beginning of season a book about this thick. We have it. We have an example of it at our desk. You need to do the same thing for your sales organization. What is the winner's manual? How do we win? The other thing, my dad used to say this to me when I was little. He used to say, plant tomatoes, get tomatoes. I see a lot of companies, not so much now, but 6-7 months ago when things were buzzing, selling flexibility, work-life balance, right? We have a fun culture. If that's how you lead your recruiting efforts, that's the type of people you're going to get. You're not going to get A players if that's your sales pitch about your company. Because guess what? It's about to get even harder than it's been for the last few months. Those people are not going to last. You're going to have to put in extra work. You're going to have to really bear down and get it done. So I wanted to look to 5 leaders that, I think we all know. So whoever had the under on how long it was going to take the Boston kid to talk about the Patriots, you were wrong. So I want to talk about 5. We all know these people, right? These are the 5 most famous coaches and leaders of people in the sports world. But what people don't know about these people is what they took over for organizations. So Bill Belichick, when Bill Belichick took over, I was 17 years old. So I had 17 years ago in a Foxborough Stadium and watched the Patriots get their ass kicked. Sorry, that's a second swear, I guess. My bad. Bill Belichick, when he took over the Patriots, they were 52-91. In 1999, they missed the playoffs. In 2001, they won the Super Bowl a year after he took over, and the rest is history. I don't want to brag too much about what happened after that. And he talks a lot about how he makes practice more difficult than games, right? So remember that. Vince Lombardi, probably the most famous coach out of everybody. In 1958, the year before he took over the Green Bay Packers, they were 1-10-1. So you're probably saying, well, they probably had really crappy players. They had 6 future Hall of Famers on that 1-10 team. He took over 1959. They went 7-5, but the following season, Green Bay's stadium sold out for tickets and has been sold out since 1960. And he went on to win 5 of the next 7 championships. Bear Bryant, right, famous Alabama coach. When he took over the organization, they had won 4 games in 3 years, which, if anyone knows college football, that ain't going to cut it. Obviously, he went on and he won 6 national championships. Some of those with the same players he had on those bad teams. And then Nick Saban, 6-7 the year before he took over in 2007, 12-2 the following year, 14-0 the next year, won a national championship. He's gone on to win 7, the most in college football history. And then one of my favorites is Pat Summitt. She's a Tennessee basketball coach. When she took over the team in 1975, first of all, 4 of the players were just 1 year younger than her. They had never been to the national tournament. Within 2 years, she went to the national championship twice, lost, and then she went on to win 8 national championships, right? So that goes back to like selling the opportunity versus building a culture and selling the culture. They sold the culture. They didn't have anything to sell. Bill Belichick definitely didn't have anything to sell when he started at the Patriots. Trust me, Foxborough was a lonely place back then. All right, so how do you create that winning culture? This is where I've had success, is you document, you measure, and you incentivize 3 things. A passion for excellence, practicing with intention, which is why I love Coach CRM and what they're doing, and pursuit of goals. So those 3 things are what A players grow up doing, okay? And I'm going to get into detail on each one. So a little bit about passion for excellence and skills. So when I think about skills, I think about knowing what does good look like and why does good look like. So we talk a lot about PLG. If PLG is part of your motion, then a skill that you need to really focus on with your team is discovery and qualification, right? You got your marketers telling you, we bring in 500 leads a week. I don't know why your sales team can't close them, because you're not practicing that skill that matters for your business. If you're selling large enterprise deals, then you need to get really good at discovering business problems and tying to the biggest business problem in the business. People spend 7 figures to solve 8-figure problems, 6 figures to solve 7-figure problems. So if you have 6-figure software, you better teach your salespeople how to find those 7-figure problems, right? Habits. When I think of habits, all of these things, I think of the why, right? You don't just tell people, hey, you need to be calling at this time, emailing at this time, filling out your Salesforce at this time. Those are important habits, but you need to explain to people why are those important habits and how do they tie back to your goal to make $1 million every year, right, as an A player. And then process, same thing. You want to go back to, again, why is this the process? Why do we have to get to an economic buyer before we share our price, right? Why do we have to tie to their ecosystem of technologies they've already invested in during our deal cycle? You need to explain the why. And you also need to document this. And you need to incentivize the people that are doing it. The next thing is practicing all that stuff, right? We used to do weekly competitions. We had 2 hours blocked off every single Friday, and we would bring our CEO in, our CFO, and our founder, and we would do head-to-head competitions on pitches, discovery calls, cold calls, all that stuff. So that's super important, is continued repetition with peers and leaders, and everybody in the organization owns this. Every single person from the top down. In terms of the environment, so this conference is a really good example. There's so much content out there for your sellers to be consuming now, the podcasts, the books. Don't just expect them to do it. Incentivize them to do it, right? You guys are in this room, so I'm assuming you're working at organizations that want you to go out and learn, but that should be a metric that you're tracking. Who's doing the extracurricular activity, right? Who's going out on the skinny branches and trying to learn every single day? And who's hugging the tree trunk, right? Those are the people that aren't A players and they're not going to make it. Pursuit of goals. I love sales because there's a scoreboard. I like that. I grew up with one. Unfortunately, I got to play Division I college hockey, but my little brother played in the NHL and represented the United States in the Olympics in 2018. So I grew up in a household where I wasn't even the best hockey player at the breakfast table. So what did I do? I tried to chug my orange juice faster than him, right? I just love winning because I didn't win a lot growing up. So I love the scoreboard in sales, and guess who else does? A players like the scoreboard. They like seeing their name up at the top. The other thing that I don't know why a lot of organizations don't do this, but we did this at Turbonomic, and it really paid dividends for us. It created a culture where everybody was helping each other. They had their quota, they had their OTE, but they had a bonus every single quarter for if the team hit our goal, right? So now, all of a sudden, a sales rep needs help, he's struggling, and your top rep is helping the worst rep because she wants to get that bonus at the end of the quarter that's related to the team. That's super important. The other thing is the clock, right? I've been living in quarters for the last 17 years, right? 90 days at a time. But that's a lot, especially when kids are first getting started. You got to break down that clock into lower chunks. Have a week, track progression, measure it, incentivize progression. So create that clock because people can sprint when they know there's an end. So if you have weekly goals, weekly spiffs, those things matter and they impact people in a really, really good way. I've seen it happen myself. So again, just to kind of wrap things up, right? When you think about going out to the world and recruiting A players, you got to learn how to sell your opportunity, whatever it is, right? Not everybody has $1 trillion TAM and some patent on an algorithm, right? You got to figure out what is your unique IP and how can you position that to an A player and all that other stuff we talked about in that software algorithm, and I'm happy to share that with everybody. But again, don't over pivot there because then you're going to end up with a bunch of mercenaries, and great sales teams are built out of missionaries. That culture of excellence, right? If you do get an A player, incentivize that A player to find people like themselves. A players know other A players. That's a big thing, right? Have a special incentive for top performers when they bring in their friends and people they know in the job market. Really, you should be telling people about your culture, about your development, about the growth opportunity they have, about how you're going to make them better during the interview process, and really lay out how you clearly define goals. It's super important. In terms of that last piece, overselling the flexibility, overselling the fun culture, laid back culture. Be really careful with that, and just remember, it is gonna make recruiting harder, right? Recruiting is hard. It was hard like 3-4 months ago when I started the business at the beginning of this year. I thought we were gonna be a $1 billion company, and then June hit, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta stop going out to dinner so much. But that being said, it's cycles. Everybody in this room knows it's going to come back, and we're going to go crazy again and focus on growth at all costs. But when you're recruiting, and you think that doing those things, selling the flexibility, just remember, it's going to come back to bite you. So you can either do that and get a bunch of people in to meet your quotas of hiring, but you're going to have to replace those people. All right, and it's going to be hard. So choose your hard, really, like anything else. It's going to be hard to recruit if you don't oversell the fun, laid-back culture. But you're going to find way better people if you talk about how much focus there is on growth, development, measurement of success, and driving those outcomes. That's going to lead to having a great organization. It'll take you longer, but going back to the stats I started with. If you're hiring BDR teams and you're saying, you're telling your company, I can't find people, there's 19 million college students out there, right? 25% of them graduate every year. You can find them. You can find the A players. It might take a little bit longer if you're not selling the fact that they can have a side gig or something, but you're going to find the right people, right? So choose your hard. Thank you guys very much. This was awesome.